It's Eric over at jaunty.org, and I'm going to talk about dating and relationships during quarantine. So, by far, everyone asked for relationship advice. So, I'm just going to give a thought note on relationship stuff during quarantine. So, let's go. Please subscribe as well on the channel, on the new channel, and I'm also going to leave the link to the original form in the box. So, I think the most important thing during quarantine that you can do for your dating and relationship life is work on you. Okay, so we'll talk about tips and tricks later. I also have a crazy little exercise that we can do to go deep within ourselves. But first, let's go through some of the obvious and maybe not so obvious things that you should be doing during quarantine. The goal, I think, is to be coming out of quarantine as a glistening, amazing, attractive person of value. So how do we do that? Well, number one is going to be health. Hopefully you're working out and getting some sun and eating right. Just go nuts on getting your skin and muscle tone and libido and sleep and energy and all that going during quarantine. I'm not going to go into all the different ways of doing that. There's plenty of that to go around. But a big part of confidence and feeling attractive is, well, technically being attractive, right? Having someone look at you a little bit more and getting some compliments and feeling that you're happy to look in the mirror and your image of yourself, obviously internal, but also externally. So that's one thing, but something that might not be so obvious, especially for guys, is fashion, right? So this is a great time to play with fashion, getting clothes that fit well, and playing around with styles and getting newer stuff and upgrading your wardrobe. And you don't have to go crazy, but you can order stuff that gets sent to you, and you can try stuff on for free. And if you don't like it, you send it back. So fashion is something that we don't think about, I know. But overall looks, as far as the accessories and fashion, we're all rocking the long hair right now. So we don't have much choice in that unless your boyfriend or girlfriend is a hairstylist or someone who is. Okay, so let's go into the skills, right? And so the skill sets are, well, what Jaunty really goes into at jaunty.org is body language and assertiveness and conversational agility and social anxiety management and belief system and the charisma stuff like storytelling and touch and sexual presence and assertiveness. Okay, so all those are skill sets. And those are things that you can check out at our website, or you can read a lot about. And conversational is a really big one, but the conversational agility. But the skills need to be backed by a belief system. And so I think during quarantine, it's really freaking hard to go talk to people, right? We have this mindset of I'm in a mask, you're in a mask. How do we speak to people? So we'll talk about offline, and then maybe I'll go in a little bit into online stuff. But taking advantage of the opportunities that we have offline, right, through people that we know or through the colleagues that we have already. Hopefully, you're getting invited to some events online and offline. But also some of our students are having fun meeting people out in the real world at cafes that are somewhat open, and lines at grocery stores, right? And so pushing yourself past the kind of routine that you've had of isolation and atrophying our voice and talking to people is going to be the hardest part. But once you get past it, you can start having fun with context, right? So how do you approach people during these times? We have masks on. Well, you can play around with masks. You can still talk, and if you create loud enough voice, you can talk through masks. And so let's talk a little bit about that, like approaching and meeting new people from 6 feet away. Well, it's definitely possible, and it's exciting. I think it's fun because everyone's starving for that a little bit. And so using humor and using playfulness and using situational stuff, right? So let's say like if someone didn't have a mask on and you didn't have a mask on, you can almost play around with that. You can use the situation and context in the moment that's around you in the environment. You can be like, oh, I see you got the same mask that I do. Yours looks a lot prettier than mine. What's your name? So whatever, just something along the lines of breaking the ice, right? Or using the situation. We're kind of coming out of a cave, right? We've been locked down, so you can make a joke about people. What have you been locked? I haven't seen you around. I haven't seen you around here. Have you been? What, you've been locked up somewhere or something, or what? So like just playing around with context, using quarantine and using not to make light of the seriousness of it, but it can be a context that you might be more comfortable starting off with, and what's cool is seeing how people react to it, right? We have masks on, so it's hard to see facial expressions, so don't be upset if they're not lighting up. And something we can do ourselves is maybe use our eyes a little bit more to be animated, right? And also use head nods a little bit more because people can't see smiles, or wave because we have our mask on and people can't see if we're really that happy or not, or wink, or right. And so you can play with these things, be a little more animated, and people are starving for it. I was walking down our street here, and a neighbor, she's an older woman who has a very tiny dog, and I was coming down the sidewalk, she was coming up the sidewalk, and so I respected the 6 feet, and so I went all the way around to the middle of the street to walk by, and she turned and she gave me an appreciation look of me getting out of the way for her and giving her space, and I said, oh, I had to keep, your dog looks really vicious. I needed to keep some distance, and we both laughed a little bit, right? And so even though it was a tiny dog, so it was pretty funny. And so using these moments to create connection. So online's a little bit different, right? And so I'm sure a lot of people are, if you don't have somebody, you're on the apps right now, and that's probably the only thing we can do mostly, other than get hooked up through friends or something, right? And so online, creating a really awesome profile. I'm not going to go into all the profile things, but great pictures and truths, writing truths in your profile, like unique. I have a video on uniqueness, you can check it out. But unique kind of truths about you can be really interesting. And that leads me to the last thing I'm going to talk about. This crazy little exercise I actually came up with today was, and it has to do with our internal confidence and our internal belief system and our internal frame. And there's a lot to this, so I'm just going to do one exercise that might help with this. And this ties into almost dating online as well, is create a mock, and the reason you can use this is so that you can dig a little deeper to be a better person coming out of quarantine, when you're ready for a relationship, when you're ready to see someone. Because if you aren't, it's up to you to meet with people, and how comfortable you are with social distancing and meeting someone new, and what your living situation is. So I can't really give advice or thoughts on that. That's your comfort level of if you do want to go to a park with someone or not, or meet up, or is it just going to be Zoom meetings, right? So let's just talk about this one exercise, which is creating a mock dating profile, right? So use like Canva or PowerPoint, and you can create a dating profile. But what's really cool about this one, no one has to see this, but I want you to write your positive things, right? You're like, oh, dominant, traveling, I love meeting new people, and I love music and concerts and blah, 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 right? You have your positives, but also have your negatives. And this is where you have to, it's hard to face yourself with these things, but this can be a game changer coming out and going into your next relationship and meeting your next person, is writing the negatives. Things like, things you would never tell people, right? Something like, for example, hey, I have commitment issues because X, Y, Z, right? Or hey, sometimes I sabotage relationships by creating these fights because I expect someone to have these negative traits, and I look for that and try to bring it out. I don't know what, right? And so write whatever, going back to some of a lot of creating confidence in relationships is undoing unconfidence. Okay, so and it's not really, some of this stuff needs maybe a psychologist and some help and some therapy, which is great. But identifying it during this time and taking one step closer to understanding yourself a little bit better, and imagine just telling someone these things. I always had a fantasy of like someone creating a Yelp before dates, where you just know the positive and negatives about someone ahead of time. But you can write these out, or like, hey, I have anger issues, and this is why I think I'm working on all the things that you write at the end. I'm working on it. Write those out, and you can kind of expose them. Take one step while you were in quarantine is to kind of face that demon, and take one step to undo or somewhat get on the right track of straightening that stuff out, and you will be much more open and ready to connect with the next person, because a lot of it is that is geared to what your insecurities are, and that will come out as an emotionally stable person, where you'll be more integrated in a relationship, and other people will see that. So those are the things that are on my mind. Hope this helped. Please let me know what you think, or if you try that exercise, please in the comments let me know, and we'll talk soon.